doses. Self-help from the hip. Small doses. We're talking that shit. Small doses. And keeping it real. Small doses. With me and them Seals. It's so funky.
Do you have any war stories that, well, first of all, do you mentor at this point?
Yes. I do mentor because it's important. And I think, especially for Black women who, maybe are thinking about covering race or thinking about covering politics, right? There are not a lot of Black women, Black people, period, in political journalism. Like most of the political journalists are white men, right? And they tend to reach back for other white men to, come behind them to cover politics. But I mean, we know with, the direction that this country is going in, right? Like that we need Black and brown people actually covering our politics because that is the direction that our politics is going in. And, for folks who thought that we were kind of in a post-racial era with Barack Obama's election.
You didn't know?
I mean, turns out it's actually hyper-racial. Oh, yeah, got that wrong. Anyway, so yeah, but like it literally takes somebody who is more experienced, who you look up to. It takes for that person to put their hand on your shoulder and say, you can do this. I'm going to help you get there. So like, it is important for me to do that because I'm tired. I'm going to be doing this forever. Let's keep it real. So, to be able to say, that I helped somebody to get to a place where they, are able to do this work, that is important to me.
So what are some war stories, if any, that you tell them, your mentees, when they call you like, I can't handle it. This shit is crazy. We out here in the streets. They gunning for us. I got hit with a rubber bullet in my temple.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do talk to them about, I talk to them about the people that I talk to who were ducking and dodging far worse than we were, in their careers. And that's not to say that folks are not in hairy situations out here trying to cover, Black Lives Matter. But I mean, seriously, like you think about the riots of the 60s, or you think about, journalists who had to go into the Deep South to try to write about Jim Crow and like the horrors of Jim Crow. They were risking their lives to do that, right? Like they were doing that, risking bodily harm or worse. So I think that is a perspective that helps a lot. Mm-hmm. But also just kind of reinforcing for them, letting them know when they feel like they're being gaslit, especially in the newsroom, right? When somebody is telling them, maybe not to write something, or if they don't want to have phrases like racially charged in their copy, and trying to push back against an editor to say, like, this doesn't really say anything. I want to actually say racist or racism.
Oh, because racially charged is like a euphemism for...
Racially charged is me plugging up my cell phone. It doesn't mean anything. Like it really doesn't. And I ask my white colleagues as well. If I see them using that in copy, I will reach out to them. It's not like about me publicly shaming them, but I will pull them aside and say, when you wrote this, what did you mean? And like after a conversation, it's very clear that what they meant to say was racist or racism, but they were not comfortable actually using that term. And so they watered it down.
So racially charged, you know what? Because to be honest, I never even put those two things together, but because I'm doing the work in my head when I'm reading it of flipping it to race, like, oh.
Well, of course, and that's the thing, right? Like that term asks you to understand what we're really trying to say, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of just making it plain, instead of telling the truth. And again, this is not about how anybody feels. This is about an accurate and honest record, right? That is supposed to be a central tenet of journalism. And to tell the truth means to point out racism when and where it exists, right? We're not asking you to call anybody a racist, right? Which we know
unless they are.
Well, I mean, unless somebody's got a hood on burning a cross in your front yard, like that's probably not going to happen in most American newsrooms, right? Like calling someone a racist that's a heavy lift for American journalism right now. But if we can even get to the point where we can say that thing that you said was racist,
right?
Or that thing that this policy is racist, right? Or this is an example of racism. Like we have to get there first before we can even begin to ascribe that label to a person.
As a journalist covering a presidency that is racially charged, first, just what was your initial reaction to, like, someone put up a meme the other day, a homegirl of mine, Reshma, she put up a tweet, actually it wasn't a meme, a tweet the other day, and she was like, and I'm paraphrasing, but shout out to everybody who knew on that night in 2018 when this person was elected, 2016 when this person was elected, who knew that it was about to go downhill and is not surprised by what is going on. Because there's a lot of people that are like, I just can't believe it's this bad. And as somebody who covers this, like, where was your head at that night?
Okay, well, I'm going to back up actually. 5 years ago last month, the president, then candidate Trump, came down the escalator, called Mexicans rapists, disparaged Muslims, said he was going to put a travel ban in, had a campaign that talked a lot about law and order in Black cities, right? Talked about the specter of voter fraud in places like Philadelphia, where I live now. That people didn't know, I think, is disingenuous. I think probably what's more accurate is that people looked away, or that people were either on board with a lot of the president's views, or they were willing to support him despite those views, right? Right. At this point, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't know kind of who the president is, especially when it comes to race. So I think it really is a question of who we are as a country. But I think, Black journalists certainly tried to, they knew what they were seeing at the president's campaign rallies, right? A lot of what his supporters were doing, a lot of what he was saying and suggesting to his supporters during those rallies. And so when these incidents come up, right? When he, brings up the great Andrew Jackson at Mount Rushmore, or goes to Tulsa on Juneteenth weekend, this is not new information. This is just the latest in a pattern that we have seen from him around race that is at this point not even a dog whistle, it's a people whistle, right? And I think that it's, and so you people are either choosing to hear it or they're not. I think that's where we are. But I think as journalists, we cannot kind of continue to soft pedal what this is. And it does feel like, I think, in some ways that you do have mainstream organizations that are more willing than they were 4 years ago to do that.
To be more hard pedaling.
To be more honest about what we are all seeing and hearing.
Do you think that's more about like the reality of what's going on in our nation, or about the fact that he doesn't fuck with them? Because, he's been very, because at first I feel like it's folks being like, okay, well, it's the president, so we have to like support, but he's been so vocal about just like, I hate media, like he'll call out news outlets, etc., that it becomes like, well, why are we protecting you? Or why are we even protecting ourselves?
Well, I don't know if it was about protecting the president for journalism. I think this is an extraordinary presidency. It's unlike anything that we've ever seen, in terms of race, in terms of somebody who, does not always seem to be interested in telling the truth, in terms of, how he takes on his political foes, or the press, right? Like these are all things that we as a society and also an industry are not used to. So I think in the beginning, much like many of the people who supported him, who were open and wanted to kind of give him a chance to see how he would govern, to see what kind of president he would be. I think the press was also approaching him in this presidency in that way, right? But we're 4 years into this thing now, and there is a pattern, there is a record here for us to examine, right? Not only as an electorate, but as the free press. Like there is a record, and we have a responsibility to interrogate that and to point out, that these incidences, when he tweets about Bubba Wallace, that's not an isolated incident, right? Like that is part of a long history now of him doing and saying these kinds of things.
Is there, well, no, I know there is, but what do you feel journalists' role is in this election? Like your role what do you feel your role as a journalist is in this upcoming election? Fuck everybody else.
My role as a journalist in this election is to be as honest as I possibly can about who and where we are as a country. Like when November 4th, the day after the election, when we get to that day, I need to be able to say, no matter what happens, that I tried my best to tell the truth about America in this moment. That's what matters, right? It's not my job to get anybody elected or to get anybody out of office. Like, that's not my job, right? But my job is to tell, like there was not enough truth telling in 2016 about this election, right? And I ask people all the time, one of my favorite exercises, whether it's journalists or just like anybody, if I'm at a dinner party, if I'm having a drink, back when we used to do those kinds of things.
Ah, yes.
Oh yeah, remember those are good times. But I ask people one of two things: either why do you think Trump won, or why do you think Hillary Clinton lost? And if one of your first answers is not racism, then you don't understand what happened in 2016. You don't understand what the election was about. When I ask people headed into 2020, what do you think? What is the main thing that this election is about? If they don't say race or gender, they don't understand what this election is about, right? Is it about the economy? Is it about healthcare? Yes, it is about those things. But race and gender are not just a story of this election. They are the story of this election. And if people do not report with that lens, then again, they're just not telling the most accurate story about where we are right now.
Would it be accurate to say, based on the numbers and the research, that Biden choosing a black woman vice president would be an effective part of him getting elected in place of this fool?
I mean, I think it could go a long way to generating excitement among the base of the Democratic Party, Black women. Who clearly are saying that they deserve a return on their investment, however that return shows up, right? Like, it could show up in the form of a Black woman VP. That would be a historic thing. I mean, there's never been a woman VP, period. And certainly having a Black woman in that role would be even more historic, right? Right. But I think you keep hearing people say, listen to Black women, right? Like that's the rallying cry, kind of in this moment and in really since 2016. That would be a way that Joe Biden could show that he is listening to Black women, but also just really the type of leadership that Black women have demonstrated and are demonstrating, especially during the pandemic. You see a lot of Black women mayors. They're leading and trying to keep their community safe, right? That's the kind of leadership, frankly, that I think people are seeing as effective and that people are saying is necessary in this moment, because whoever the next president is going to have to fix a lot of stuff, right? I mean, not just our economy, not just our public health system, but they're going to have to do some healing of the country.
It's a PTSD situation. I mean,
I mean, like, and so like thinking about
collectively.
who maybe would be best able to do that. Black women certainly would be high on the list for a lot of people.
I mean, we have effectively been doing that in a number of spaces.
It's what we
whether
do.
we're paid for it or not.
It's what we do. I mean, before we were free and before we were able to vote, Black women have been the caretakers of this democracy, right? And our vote is an extension of that. And our leadership is an extension of that.
It's always on us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do bloggers lie in journalism? Because I can't take it.
I mean, blogging is blogging. It's not journalism.